Hey there, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. I have been moving since early morning, just keeping my head down and putting distance between myself and the place where everything fell apart. The road stretches ahead without a single working sign, only faded metal plates bent in odd directions. My boots stick to the softened asphalt after last night's drizzle, and my right ankle keeps reminding me that I twisted it 2 days ago during a sprint I should not have survived. I check it with each step and hope it does not give out. It feels cold, which is better than swollen. The sky has that dull color that shows up before a storm. No blue, no sun, just heavy clouds stacked low. The wind keeps rolling across the empty fields on both sides of the road, carrying the stale smell of rot from somewhere behind me. I do not turn around. The smell follows everyone these days. I shift the pistol on my belt and feel the weight of it. Just 4 rounds left. I have counted that number so often that it repeats in my head without trying. I try not to think about the garage, but my mind drags me back anyway. Loud voices, broken glass, the rush of footsteps, the rifles. The moment when the group separated, 2 toward the alley, 1 toward the back door, and me outside, shouting for everyone to regroup. The infected poured into that mess like water into a cracked floor. No formation, no strategy, only panic. I look straight ahead, tighten my jaw, and keep moving. Thinking about it solves nothing. Rain starts as small dots across my sleeves. Then the sky opens up without patience. A wall of water slams down hard enough that I blink through it just to see the next few steps. The road glistens under each flash of grey light. I raise my hood, but the wind pushes it off twice before I manage to secure it. I look around for cover, but everything in this area burned, collapsed, or rotted years before the outbreak. I am about to turn off toward a line of trees when something flashes through the rain, a dull red blink. It cuts through the downpour for 1 second, disappears, then appears again on the same rhythm, slow, predictable, high up, too high to be anything but a tower. I wipe my face with my sleeve and stare at it. Another blink. Another. Whatever is up there, it is powered by something still functioning. That alone pulls me toward it more than the hope of shelter. I pick up my pace. The rain runs into my eyes again, so I lower my head and move by instinct, checking the distance between flashes. When I finally see the outline through the haze, my steps slow. A water tower, a big one, the kind with a thick central column and metal legs stretching down like a tripod around it. The beacon sits on top, pulsing red. The sight of an active light makes me uneasy. Lights attract trouble. Still, high ground is high ground. A burned snack bar sits near the tower. Half roof, half hole, the rest scattered around the entrance. It is enough to get me out of the rain. I jog toward it, slip once on wet concrete, catch myself, then slide inside. The place smells like a mix of mold and burnt insulation. The floor is covered in debris and soaked paper. I drop my pack behind the counter and crouch near a broken window where I can watch the tower without exposing myself. The beacon blinks again, lighting the low sky for a second at a time. Nothing moves on the platform at the top. I watch for long stretches. Enough time for my clothes to dry a little under the weak cover. The storm keeps pounding the roof, rattling what is left of the snack bar sign. But the tower stays silent and still. By nightfall, the storm levels out. Rain drips through cracks in the ceiling and lands on the counter beside me. I shift metal sheets against the wall to make a small dry corner where I can sit. The water leaks through the roof in thin streams, so I keep changing positions. I should sleep, but every time my eyes close, a memory crawls in from the last attack, and I snap them open again. So I watch the tower until the storm rolls past. The red light is steady, a pulse with no emotion behind it. Morning creeps in as a pale smear above the horizon. My back aches from the awkward sleeping position I kept drifting in and out of. I stretch my legs and step outside. Mud sticks to my boots, and the air feels colder. The beacon blinks again, same tempo as last night. I scan the tower with more attention now that the rain has cleared. The main access ladder is cut halfway up. Strange choice. Cutting it would only make sense if the person living there wanted complete isolation. I circle the snack bar and walk a wide loop toward the tower fence. I stay low enough that anyone on the platform would have to lean far out to spot me. The fence is put together from wood scraps, plywood sheets, and rusted metal pieces that used to be part of something else. A few boards have deep cracks. Something strong hit them, infected maybe, or people trying to break in. There are bodies around the fence line, old and stiff. Some have arrows stuck in their skulls. Some have crossbow bolts planted in their ribs. Others have deep gashes along their necks. The spread of them suggests someone picked them off from above, one by one. The shots look precise. Whoever defended the tower knew how to use silent weapons. I back away from the fence. I avoid leaving footprints close to bodies. It is a habit now, something that came from seeing too many ambushes set up around corpses. I return to the snack bar and sit again by the window, listening for any sound from the tower. Nothing. No movement. No tools. No voices. Just the wind pushing past the structure. I check my supplies. Not much left. One small bag of oats, a little water, and whatever scraps I might scavenge from abandoned houses. If the tower is empty, it might hold something better. If it is not empty, I will deal with that when it comes. By midday, I start looking for anything I can use to build an access point. The ladder is too high to reach by hand, even if I jump. Down the road, I spot an old pickup truck leaning sideways in a ditch. The paint is faded beyond recognition. All 4 tires are flat. The engine compartment is empty, but the frame is intact, and the truck bed sits higher than ground level. That is enough for me. Getting it out of the ditch is a fight. I push with my shoulder braced against the side, legs slipping in mud. Inch by inch, it creeps up until one tire snaps free. I nearly fall with it but catch myself on the doorframe. Sweat runs down my face despite the cold air. I take a minute to breathe, then try again. The truck finally settles onto the road with a loud scrape. I shift it into neutral and start pushing. It rolls slowly, but the weight drags my shoulders down. I guide it toward the tower, stopping twice to clear branches and broken boards out of the way. When it bumps against the fence, I let go and stretch my arms. My hands shake from the effort. I stack crates from behind the snack bar into the truck bed. They wobble, so I reinforce them with metal sheets. When I stand on them, I can reach just below the cut section of ladder. Not enough. I wrap a rope around the lowest intact rung and pull. It scrapes forward just enough that I can grip it. I give the rung a few hard tugs to test the strength, talking under my breath because it keeps me focused. Please do not snap. Not right now. Not after everything. It sounds ridiculous, but speaking helps me stay steady. I shift my boots, make sure the crates will not collapse under me, and commit. I grab the rung with both hands and lift myself until my feet leave the pile of junk behind. My arms strain, and the metal is cold enough that it bites through the skin of my palms, but the rung holds. The first few pulls upward are slow and careful. I keep telling myself to move with purpose, not panic. Climbing is not complicated, but climbing something old, rusted and cut apart is the kind of problem that ends with broken ribs or a broken neck if I mess up. The tower legs shake lightly each time the wind pushes, and I feel those vibrations through the ladder. I pause halfway through the second section and glance down. The crates look smaller from here than they should, and the truck bed already feels far away. Do not look again, I mutter. Just finish the climb. I keep going, rung by rung, checking each one before trusting my weight. I reach the place where the ladder was cut off. The missing chunk leaves a jagged edge of metal, and I wonder again what kind of tool someone used on it. Maybe a grinder powered off a battery, maybe a cutting torch if he had fuel. Whoever lived up here wanted no surprises. That thought keeps rolling around in my mind. I would never cut my only escape route unless I was desperate or terrified of someone below. I grab the next rung above the cut and push myself over the gap. My arms shake as I pull up and lock one elbow over the side rail, catching my breath before the last segment of climbing. The wind shifts and pushes against my back. I lean forward so I do not swing. The tower groans, metal bending the way old structures do after too many seasons without repairs. I picture the tank above me, hollowed out and empty, just a thin shell of steel holding up years of rust. "One rung at a time," I whisper. "Do not think about the whole thing." That works better than trying to ignore the noise. I climb faster, knowing that hesitation makes everything worse. When I reach the final ladder bracket attached to the platform, I pause again and test the wooden boards with my foot. They flex too much. Something snaps faintly under the surface. I jerk my foot back, heart jumping even though I try not to describe it that way. My body reacts before my mind catches up. I shift my weight and reach to the right instead, grabbing a metal support beam that looks more reliable than the wood. I pull myself sideways and climb onto the beam instead of the boards. From there, I slide onto a small section of sturdier planks and crouch until I feel stable. No sudden movements, no heavy steps. The platform circles the tower, but a lot of it sags under years of weather. Someone had reinforced parts of it with scrap metal, but those sections sit unevenly and could shift under the wrong weight distribution. I mumble, "Great place to hide, terrible place to walk." Now that I can finally see the whole top level, the signs of a makeshift shelter jump out immediately. There is a canopy of tarps stretched across poles and tied down with rope. One corner is loose and flaps sideways with each gust. There is a small wood railing built from mismatched planks, though parts of it look as if they were ripped out during a struggle. Torn fabric lies near the edge, caught on screws sticking out from the railing. The smell up here is sharp, the kind that comes from old bodies that dried out in the open air. Not overwhelming, just enough to warn me that I am not alone. I move toward the canopy, stepping carefully across boards that dip under my weight. My hand rests on the pistol grip, even though I doubt I will fire it. Sound travels too far up here, and I cannot afford to draw attention. When I reach the open area beneath the tarp, I freeze. A body sits slumped against the inner framework, legs stretched out, hands resting near its lap. At first I think he is long dead, because he sits so still, head tilted forward in a strange angle. But then I see the faint twitch in his fingers. Not a spasm from life. A twitch I have seen too many times in the infected. He wears torn tactical clothing, faded and patched. 2 deep punctures in his chest show where arrows or bolts once lodged. Several bullet holes scatter across the railing near him. The impact marks are large, too large for common handguns. Whoever shot him used rifles with heavy rounds. I step back slowly and reach for my knife. I whisper to myself, "Do not rush. Make it clean." I have learned through too many encounters that infected can stay almost dormant in strange positions, half frozen or dehydrated. This one barely reacts to my movement, but when I lean closer to cut the strap holding a crossbow to his chest, his head snaps upward. His teeth clamp down toward my wrist. I stumble back, slam my shoulder into the canopy pole, and bring the knife down fast and hard into the infected's skull. The resistance is unpleasant, but it works. The twitching stops. I stand there for a moment, catching my breath through clenched teeth. I say out loud, not the greeting I hoped for. My voice sounds rough, like it belongs to someone else. I shake out my hand, check the knife blade for cracks, then lean down and unfasten the crossbow strap properly this time. The weapon is worn and scratched, but the limbs look intact. No bolts anywhere. That matches the corpses on the ground below. Once I am sure the body will not move again, I check the immediate area. There is a crate under the canopy filled with cloth scraps, an empty thermos, a pair of broken binoculars, and a jar containing something that might have been berries before they turned into sludge. Another crate holds rusted tools and rope. I move each item carefully, listening for anything unusual. The structure creaks every time I shift my weight. I mutter, "This place is one strong wind away from dropping," and keep checking anyway. Being up here offers a clear view of everything around for miles. Even with all the damage, I understand why someone made it his home. A metal hatch sits at the center of the platform, leading into the tower's interior. The handle is stiff, probably stuck from age and rust. I crouch, test it slowly. and feel it loosen with enough force. The hinges groan but open. A wave of cold, stale air rises from below. The inside looks dark, but I spot shelves built into the circular wall. Someone stripped the insulation and dried the interior thoroughly. I lift myself down the ladder welded inside and let my boots touch the curved metal floor. The room is cleaner than I expected. A cot sits in one corner with blankets stacked on top. Most of them are ruined, eaten through by moisture or rodents. A few sealed cans rest on a shelf. When I shake them, nothing leaks, which means they might still be good. An old rainwater barrel sits beneath a pipe that leads through the tank roof, but the barrel is nearly empty, and the pipe looks cracked. Someone tried to set up water collection here, but something must have damaged it. Maybe the gunfire, maybe a storm. I walk along the interior wall, checking for structural weaknesses. The metal is cold and dry. Someone really put work into clearing out the rot. I run my hand along a row of shallow dents in the steel. Bullet impacts that did not fully penetrate. Whoever lived here was attacked from below, and maybe from nearby rooftops or vehicles. I try to imagine the fight, then stop myself because guessing always leads to the wrong story. All I need to know is that the place was defended and nearly held. I sit carefully on the cot and set the crossbow beside me. My hands shake with leftover adrenaline. I rub them together and stare up through the hatch at the moving shadows of the tarp. For the first time in weeks, the thought crosses my mind that this could be a place to stay for a little while. Not long. Nothing lasts long anymore, but long enough to recover and figure out my next move. I whisper, "Do not get comfortable yet," because every time I have trusted a shelter too quickly, something or someone forced me out. After a few minutes, I stand again and start sorting through what I can actually use. 2 sealed cans, a small knife that is dull but might work for scraping or light cutting, rope, cloth, a jar with old matches that might still spark, a metal pot with a dented bottom, no ammunition, no medicine. Whoever lived here must have taken everything essential during his final hours or locked it somewhere I have not looked yet. I remind myself that I am lucky to find anything that is not spoiled. I check the barrel again, then lift it slightly. Only a thin layer of stale water inside. I do not drink it. Not until I boil it or filter it, which means I need a fire source. There is no ventilation here unless I open the hatch, and open flames in a closed metal tank are a terrible idea. I whisper, one problem at a time, and lower the barrel gently. The wind outside hits the tower again. The structure shivers. From inside, the movement feels worse, like the entire world tilts by an inch or two. I grab one of the metal struts for balance and wait for the gust to pass. When it settles, I breathe out through my nose and shake my head. If this thing falls over, I say quietly, at least the fall will be fast. It is a joke, but not really. I climb back up to the platform and close the hatch behind me. I take another slow walk around the canopy area, inspecting the boards, the nails, the rope, everything that keeps this place from collapsing under my feet. It will need real repairs if I stay, and staying is starting to feel less optional and more necessary. I am too worn down to keep wandering without a plan. I need time to think, to recover, and to build something reliable. I look out across the fields, empty roads, empty houses, empty everything. No shapes moving, no vehicles, no smoke, no signals. Just the quiet kind of emptiness that always comes after heavy storms. I rest my hand on the railing, careful not to lean too hard in case the wood gives out. I say softly, "Nobody is coming back for this place. It is mine if I want it." I stay there until the wind cools my face, then head back under the canopy. I pick a corner where the boards feel solid and sit down. I do not lie down yet. I want to stay awake a little longer to make sure nothing else stirs on this tower. But my body is closing in on its limit. The climb drained more strength than I expected. My shoulders ache. My hands feel raw. My ankle throbs from gripping the ladder too tightly. At some point my eyes close, and I tell myself it is only for a minute. The minute stretches without permission. and I wake later with my face against the tarp and a stiff neck that reminds me I am not built for sleeping upright anymore. The next morning arrives slowly. The sky is still grey, but the storm has moved on. I move around the platform with careful steps, checking the edges for movement below. There is nothing waiting for me, no infected crowding the base or wandering through the nearby grass. The quiet feels strange, almost heavy, but I know better than to relax too much. Still, my limbs feel sore enough that I decide today will not involve climbing down, scavenging, or building anything complicated. I need rest. I have pushed my luck for too many days, and it is starting to show. I head inside the tower and sit on the edge of the cot. My body sinks into it more than I expect, and I let out a sound that is somewhere between relief and exhaustion. I tell myself that 2 full days of minimal activity might be enough to bring me back to something close to normal as anyone can get anymore. The idea of staying put for once feels dangerous and comforting at the same time. Dangerous because staying anywhere too long invites trouble. Comforting because I cannot remember the last time I allowed myself more than a few hours of rest. I inventory my supplies again, even though I already know them by heart. 2 cans of food, a handful of matches that might work if I dry them out, a dented pot, a dull knife, rope, scrap cloth, the crossbow with no bolts, a few metal rods that the previous owner probably used as tent stakes or support beams. Nothing impressive, but enough to start planning. I talk to myself quietly, not out of habit, but because hearing a voice helps me focus. You need a way up and down, you need water, you need warmth, and you need to do it without burning this place down or drawing attention. The rope ladder idea comes back immediately. I thought of it last night while drifting off. The cut ladder is a problem that will never fix itself, and I cannot rely on climbing that unstable mess every time I want to leave or return. If I build a rope ladder with proper spacing and reinforced steps, I can pull it up behind me once I am on top. That means no one can reach me unless he has tools or more determination than most scavengers. I gather the ropes and scraps of pipe from the crates under the canopy. Some pipes are bent, but they are strong enough to work as steps if tied properly. I sort everything into piles and sit cross-legged beside them, turning each piece in my hands like I am solving a puzzle. Before I start tying anything, I need a plan for fire. I cannot cook inside the tank. The lack of ventilation would smoke me out, and the heat alone might weaken the joints or warp the interior. Fire also draws attention, and being elevated does not mean I am invisible. The platform, though, if I use a small tin or an old pot and keep the flames low, the canopy might trap the smoke long enough for it to disperse instead of forming a clear signal for anyone watching the horizon. I say it out loud. Small fire, not a campfire, no big flames, just enough to warm food or boil water. I kneel and check the tarps more closely. One of them hangs low enough that, with some rope adjustment, I could create a small air gap on the downwind side. That would let smoke escape without rising straight into the sky. The previous owner probably thought of something similar, judging by the dark stains near one tarp corner. I touch the marks. Cold. No soot comes off, which means the fire was used long ago, not recently. I adjust the tarp slightly, testing how the wind pushes through it. The structure shifts but holds. After that, I allow myself a few hours of rest. I lie on the cot with my hands folded on my chest, staring up at the curved ceiling. I keep drifting in and out, never fully asleep. The creaks in the metal structure make sure of that. Every time the tower shifts, I sit up and listen to the surroundings. Silence. Only the wind. The second day is mostly the same. Short walks around the platform to stretch my legs. Small sips of water, rechecking the edge of the canopy. I catch myself talking under my breath more than usual. If I leave in this condition, I will not get far. You stay put. One thing at a time. By evening of the second day, I feel rested enough to start working on the rope ladder. I drag everything to the largest stable section of platform. The ropes vary in length and age. Some sections are frayed and will need to be cut off entirely. The pipes come in different diameters, though most are narrow enough to grip safely. I measure with my foot the approximate spacing I want between steps. Too close, and the ladder will tangle. Too far, and the climb becomes a strain. I settle on a comfortable distance and start tying knots. My hands ache from the repetitive motion of pulling rope tight. The wind keeps pushing my hair into my eyes, and I keep brushing it aside. I work slowly, double-checking each knot. I tell myself, if one knot fails, that is the whole climb gone. So I retie every connection twice. The rhythm becomes calming, like something from before the outbreak, when repetition meant progress instead of survival. I keep glancing toward the edge of the tower just in case something below starts gathering, but the view stays empty. Once the first half of the ladder is complete, I test its weight by pulling it taut. The ropes hold, the pipes stay aligned. It is not pretty, and some steps tilt more than they should, but beauty is not the goal, function is. I drape the first section over the railing and hang onto it, letting it take part of my weight. It creaks, stretches, and then settles. I smile a little without meaning to. Good, that is something done. I finish the second half as the sky darkens. The temperature drops fast up here, and I rub my arms while checking the tension on the knots one more time. With the rope ladder complete, I pull it back onto the platform and roll it tight. I need to figure out how to anchor it so I can deploy it without leaning too far over the edge. There is an old metal hook bolted into the support beam near the hatch. Someone once hung equipment from it. If I can loosen the bolt enough to slide the rope under without removing the whole hook, it might serve as a stable anchor point. I kneel beside the hook and work the bolt with the dull knife. It takes longer than it should. The bolt is rusted in place, and my hands keep slipping. After several attempts, I manage to loosen it just enough to slide the rope behind the metal loop. I secure it tightly and sit back, letting my hands fall into my lap. My fingers are stiff and raw. My mind, though, feels sharper now that I have something that resembles a plan. With the ladder sorted, I turn my attention back to fire. I go through the crates again and gather anything that burns slowly. Cloth scraps, thin strips of old rope, wood pieces from broken boards. I do not want to use too much at once. I only need enough fire to warm water or take the chill off the platform. I move the dented pot under the lowest part of the canopy and test the airflow again with a small piece of burning cloth. The smoke drifts sideways instead of straight up, which is exactly what I want. I watch it carefully until the flame dies. No sparks, no heat against the tarp. That gives me confidence to try again later with actual fuel. By the end of the second day, I feel more like myself. Still worn, still sore, still carrying everything that happened with the group before this, but more grounded. I sit under the canopy with the rolled rope ladder beside me and stare at the horizon. The sky is starting to show thin breaks in the clouds, letting a bit of pale light through. I talk to the empty air. You might actually pull this off. Just do not get ahead of yourself. I keep my voice low, almost a whisper, because even when no one is around, the habit of staying quiet is hard to shake. I lift the rope ladder, feel its weight, and rest it against the wall. It is crude but functional, which is more than I had 2 days ago. Morning comes with a stiff wind that pushes across the platform and carries the cold straight into my arms and legs. I rub my hands together and check the canopy above me. The tarps shift and pull against the ropes, but everything stays in place. My next step is to test the rope ladder properly, which means I need to prepare myself to descend for the first time since climbing up here. The thought alone makes my stomach tighten. If the ladder fails halfway, no one will save me. I walk the perimeter of the platform again, forcing myself to assess the supports instead of imagining the fall. The wood beneath my boots dips slightly in a few places. Most of the damage seems old, caused by storms, or maybe the gunfire that left all those marks. The previous owner braced sections of the platform with metal strips, but even those are rusting. I crouch by one section and push down with my palm, then lean in to inspect a bolt that looks loose. I mutter to myself, if this thing decides to give out, it will not warn you first. Talking helps me focus on the repairs instead of the risks. I return inside the tank and gather the metal rods and rope I set aside earlier. I spend the next hour reinforcing weak points. I wedge a metal rod under one section to distribute the weight more evenly, tying it in place with 2 lengths of rope. The rope is rough against my hands, and each knot drags fibers across my skin. My fingers feel raw, but I keep going. When I finish with the first spot, I move to the next. The work is slow and requires awkward positions, sometimes forcing me to lie flat to reach under a low plank. There are moments when the structure shifts under me and sends a sharp jolt of caution through my body, but I push through it. This platform needs to hold if I want any chance of staying here. By midday, the wind calms enough that I feel ready to test the rope ladder. I unroll it near the railing and tie the ends firmly to the metal hook I loosened earlier. I pull on the rope with my full weight several times, shifting angles to mimic climbing pressure. It holds. I pull again, harder, still holding. I take one step back and say out loud, "Well, this is the part I hate," and grip the rope. Testing it without actually climbing feels pointless, so I step onto the first pipe rung. It bends slightly but stays in place. I shift my weight, grab the next rung, and lower myself over the railing. The first few feet feel manageable. The rope swings a little because of the breeze, but nothing too severe. I move slowly, and keep my eyes locked on each knot to make sure nothing slips. When I have descended far enough to see the truck beneath me, I pause. The view is strange from this angle. The crates in the truck bed look flimsy from above, and the ground beside them shows drag marks from the infected that wandered through here in the past. I take another step down, and the rope shifts unexpectedly. My foot slips. I grip the rope tighter, letting out a tense breath. "Steady. You knew this would not be comfortable." I reach the ground after several long breaths and step away from the ladder, shaking my hands to loosen the tension in them. The dirt feels solid and familiar compared to the height. The first thing I do is scan the perimeter for movement. The wind stirs the grass, and a few branches sway in the distance, but nothing else moves. The area feels empty in a way that always makes me uneasy. Empty space out here usually means either danger passed through recently or danger is waiting to return. I push the thought aside and focus on gathering what I need. My plan is simple. Find wood that is not too rotten, collect anything useful from the snack bar and burned structures, check the surrounding area for signs of human activity, and return before evening. The first part goes smoothly. I find several workable planks behind the snack bar, though I have to pry them away from a collapsed section of wall. The nails are rusty and bend easily, but I pocket the ones that still hold their shape. I talk to myself while I work. You can do something with this. Not pretty, but strong enough. I return to the pickup truck and push it a few feet aside to make room for the rope ladder to hang cleanly. While doing this, I notice something I did not catch before. Dried tire tracks leading away from the tower, not from the direction I came. The rain softened the dirt, but not enough to erase the imprint completely. These tracks look newer than the others. Someone came through here after the storm. I crouch and touch the edge of one print. It is firm, but not rock hard, which means at most a few days old. I look out toward the road, scanning for any sign of movement. Nothing, but the thought stays with me. I keep gathering supplies, but my awareness sharpens. Every time a branch snaps in the wind, I straighten up and look around. I collect bits of wiring, scrap metal, and a piece of tarp that might help reinforce the canopy later. I find an old toolbox half buried under a collapsed sign. Most of the tools are rusted beyond use, but a pair of pliers looks salvageable. I slip it into my pocket. As I circle the area one more time, I talk quietly again. Someone was here. Maybe scouting, maybe passing through. You do not know their intent, so do not assume anything. Before climbing back up, I stop by one of the bodies near the fence. It is an older infected, dried and curled in on itself. The bolt sticking out of its ribcage is weathered but intact. I pull it free, testing the shaft. It is warped, but could still be reshaped if I heat it carefully. Maybe I can use it as a template to carve wooden bolts later. I place it in my pack, then move quickly toward the rope ladder. Staying on the ground too long makes my nerves rise. Climbing up the rope ladder is harder than climbing down. My arms strain, and the rope cuts into my fingers. Each time the wind shakes the tower, the ladder sways, and I press my face into the rungs until the movement stops. This ascent takes longer than I want to admit. When I finally pull myself back onto the platform, I sit with my back against the railing and breathe out slowly. The height never feels natural. It helps to tell myself, you built the ladder, you tested the knots, you can trust your own work. I do not fully believe it yet, but saying it keeps my hands steady enough to start unloading the supplies. As I lay out the wood and scraps, I notice another detail I overlooked earlier. Some of the bullet holes in the railing have clean, sharp edges, too sharp for rounds fired years ago. The metal should show more rust around the edges. That means at least some of those shots happened not long before the previous owner died. I lean closer and examine the marks. The angle suggests someone shot upward from below. Maybe raiders tried to storm the tower. Maybe the person up here fired back until he ran out of options. I whisper, "You picked a place with history. Do not forget that." The rest of the afternoon goes into sorting and repairing. I reinforce the platform sections with the new planks and tie down the edges of the canopy with the extra tarp. I use the pliers to twist wire into makeshift brackets. It is slow work, but each small fix makes the structure feel less likely to collapse under me. As I move around, I think through everything I saw on the ground. The tracks, the old bolts, the scattered debris. None of it gives me a clear answer, but it warns me enough to take precautions. When evening settles in, I light a very small cloth wick in the dented pot and warm a handful of water. The smoke drifts sideways exactly as planned. I watch the steam rise and test it with my hand to make sure it is not too hot. I drink the lukewarm water slowly, letting it ease the dryness in my throat. The warmth helps, even if only a little. I sit there in the dim light, listening to the wind slide across the metal tower, and think about the next day. I need more materials. I need a steady water source. I need a plan for the possibility of whoever left those tire tracks returning. All of it weighs on me, but not enough to pull me under. I tell myself, you take this step by step, nothing more. I look out at the horizon again, darker now, with tiny streaks of fading light behind the clouds. For the moment, the tower feels like mine. Not safe, not secure, but mine. That feeling is rare, and I hold on to it. I stay under the canopy long enough for the wind to settle, and then I climb down into the tank to lie on the cot for a few hours. My body finally relaxes into something close to real sleep, the kind that does not snap awake every few minutes from old habits. The next morning breaks earlier than I want it to. A chill moves through the tower and shakes whatever warmth I gathered from sleep. I climb up to the platform, stretch my arms, and look over the edge. The ground is clear, the fields sway in the wind, nothing more. I force down a small breakfast from one of the cans I found. The taste is dull, but it is fuel, and that is enough for now. My first priority today is water. I have been stretching the last of it, but that cannot continue. The rain already passed, and there is no guarantee another storm will roll in soon. I kneel beside the damaged rain pipe and inspect the cracks again. The split is wide enough that most water spills out before reaching the barrel. I could patch it, but I do not have anything watertight enough yet. The only option is to climb down and look for more materials in the area. I lower the rope ladder and grip the top rung. Every time I put my weight on it, I feel the strain in my arms and shoulders, but the ladder holds. When my boots touch the ground, I scan the tree line. There is no movement. The silence down here is different from the silence up on the tower. Down here, there is always the chance that something is watching from grass level, waiting for me to let my guard down. I keep the pistol unholstered and move with slow steps. I start with the snack bar, searching more thoroughly than before. The interior looks stripped, but not completely worthless. Behind the counter, I find a plastic bin with several broken bottles and a rusted metal bucket. The bucket could hold water if I clean it out. I remove the old sludge inside using a cracked spatula. When the bucket is mostly clean, I set it aside. I also find a short length of flexible tubing under a collapsed shelf. It is bent, and one end is torn, but it might help me patch the rain pipe. I toss it into the bucket with a few pieces of scrap metal that could serve as seals. Outside, the air carries a smell of leftovers from the storm, wet dirt, unsettled vegetation, and something faintly sour from the old bodies near the fence. I try not to let it get into my head. I move toward the service road next, where a row of damaged vending machines sits half buried in weeds. I pry open one of the machines using a metal rod from my pack. Inside, most of the contents melted or burst long ago, but a roll of plastic wrap remains untouched at the top. That catches my attention immediately. Plastic wrap can seal cracks if layered tightly enough. I drag the roll free and tuck it under my arm. Once I gather enough items to justify a return trip, I stop by the tire tracks again. I crouch and study them more closely. Some prints overlap, worn by rain, but one stands out, a deeper groove created by a heavy vehicle. Not a small truck like the one I moved earlier. Something larger, maybe a flatbed or a modified transport. I touch the track and feel a faint firmness that was not there yesterday. I cannot tell if that is my imagination or something real. I stand, look in the direction the tracks lead, and see nothing but an empty stretch of road and some low hills. My instincts say not to follow them. Not today. Climbing back to the tower takes longer because of the weight of the bucket and tubing. Halfway up, the rope ladder sways harder than usual. I stop and look down. A small group of infected is emerging from the tree line. Not many, maybe 3 or 4, but close enough that I feel a pulse of urgency. I climb faster, the ladder creaking under each pull. The infected move toward the tower slowly, drawn by the sound I made while collecting supplies. Their movements are stiff, like their joints never fully thawed after the storm. I reach the railing and pull myself up, then haul the rope ladder up behind me. The infected reach the base and begin pushing at the fence. The wood groans but holds. I stand above them, watching as they reach upward with empty hands. I wait for them to lose interest. It takes almost half an hour. Eventually, one wanders toward the road, then another, until the group drifts away with no pattern. When they disappear into the distance, I let out a slow breath and return to the canopy. My hands shake slightly, not from fear but from the leftover tension of climbing with too much weight. I place the bucket and tubing on the platform and sit down to calm myself. Moments like this remind me how fragile this setup is. A few more infected, or ones with stronger movement, and that fence would not last. I rub my forehead and mutter, "You need to reinforce that too. Add it to the list." With the immediate danger gone, I move to the cracked rain pipe and begin patching. I clean the area with cloth and wrap the damaged section with layers of plastic, tightening each rotation until the material stretches. Then I tie strips of rope around the patch to hold everything in place. The flexible tubing fits neatly around another crack, when I wedge it between the metal joints and seal it with more plastic. When I finish, the pipe looks uneven, but functional. I tap it gently and feel a little hope. The next task is the bucket. I scrub it with sand and leftover cloth until the metal feels clean enough for water. I place it inside the tower near the hatch, where I can later install a funnel or extend the rain pipe if I find more materials. For now, it is enough to know I have a container that will not poison me. I lean against the interior wall and look at the layout again. The previous owner did most of the hard work, cleaning the inside, reinforcing the supports, setting up shelves. I can build on that. I just need to avoid making the same mistakes he did, whatever those were. When I climb back up to the platform, I start reinforcing the canopy frame using the scrap metal pieces I found. This work goes slower than expected. The wind keeps pushing me sideways, and the rusted metal resists being bent into shape. I talk under my breath again. Come on, just cooperate for once. The annoyance sounds almost stupid out loud, but it keeps me moving. After an hour, the canopy feels sturdier, and the edges flap less violently. I sit back to inspect the work. Not perfect, but acceptable. Before evening, I take another long look at the horizon. Something feels different. The air carries less noise than usual. Even the wind has softened. I cannot explain why, but the silence has a heavier quality to it. I scan the fields again. No infected, no animals, no movement. I turn slowly and check the road in every direction. Still nothing. I tense slightly and tell myself to stop imagining things. But then I see something new. Out by the far ditch near the road, a faint reflection of light. A tiny flash, like sunlight bouncing off glass. I stare at it for a long moment, trying to catch it again. It does not repeat. It could be nothing, a piece of broken mirror, a cracked windshield, or it could be someone watching with binoculars, someone checking whether the tower is occupied. The thought chills me more than the wind. I lower myself behind the railing and stay still for several minutes. My breathing settles, and I keep my gaze fixed on the ditch. Nothing moves, no flash, no sign of life. Eventually I stand again and scold myself quietly. You might be seeing things because you are tired. Even so, I make a mental note to stay alert. As night approaches, I warm another small amount of water using the cloth wick method. The flame is small enough that it barely produces smoke. I drink slowly, letting the warmth spread down my throat. I sit under the canopy, listening for anything out of place. The tower creaks. The wind pushes against the tarp. My muscles ache from the work of the day, but the feeling is good, a sign that I am building something, not just reacting to disaster after disaster. The more I settle into this place, the clearer it becomes that surviving here will require more than patching old boards and hoarding scraps. I need a real weapon that does not rely on bullets I no longer have. The crossbow resting beside me feels like a starting point, but only if I can find bolts that are intact. When daylight returns, I climb down the rope ladder and stay still for a moment, scanning the area. Nothing moves except grass shifting in the wind. I circle the fence and search the ground carefully. Old bodies lie in awkward positions, many pierced by bolts and arrows from the previous owner. Most of the shafts shattered or rotted, but a few survived. I pry one from a corpse near the service road and roll it between my fingers. The metal tip is dull but salvageable, the shaft straight enough to use. I carry it and continue searching. After 20 minutes, I gather 4 bolts worth keeping, and a few pieces of broken ones that I might repair if I figure out how later. Once I return to the tower base, I decide it is time to learn how to shoot this thing. I cannot take it for granted just because the previous owner managed to use it well. Skills do not transfer by touching the weapon. I drag metal scraps, boxes, and pieces of plywood across the dirt and make a small shooting range facing away from any open approach. I set a piece of broken siding upright and mark a rough target on it using charcoal from the snack bar's old fryer. The setup looks basic, but basic is all I need right now. I load the crossbow for the first time. The mechanism feels stiff, probably from age and poor storage. I test the trigger, feeling how much pressure it requires. The first bolt fires off with a loud twang that echoes too much for my liking. The bolt sails wide and lands uselessly in the grass. I mutter something under my breath and shake my head. All right, that was terrible, I say quietly, not scolding myself, but acknowledging reality. I retrieve the bolt and try again. The second shot hits the plywood, but far from the mark. The vibration in the crossbow makes me realize how unsteady my grip is. I brace myself differently and repeat the process. Hours pass like this. Miss after miss. Slight improvements. More misses. I adjust my stance, adjust my aim, adjust my breathing rhythm. I learn to keep my shoulders relaxed and not tense up right before firing. By midday, I managed to land 2 shots near the rough center of the board. I would not trust myself to hit anything moving, but a slow target at close range might be possible. That thought alone feels like progress. I stay at it until the light shifts toward late afternoon. When my hands begin to shake from strain, I stop. Continuing while tired only teaches bad habits, and I cannot afford those. I collect the bolts and climb back to the platform, feeling the crossbow's weight differently now. Not as a strange relic, but as a tool that might one day save me. The next morning, I repeat the practice. I shoot until my arms burn and my fingers ache. Sometimes I miss the entire target. Sometimes I hit the frame instead of the plywood. But slowly, very slowly, The bolts start landing closer together. I still talk to myself without realizing it. Keep it straight. Do not yank the trigger. Follow through. The habit becomes a quiet rhythm that guides my focus. I lose one bolt in the weeds and spend nearly an hour searching for it, not because it was worth saving, but because wasting resources now feels unforgivable. On the third morning of practice, something shifts in the air. While adjusting the crossbow near the base of the tower, I hear movement out past the trees. Not the shuffling pattern of infected, and not the wind. I crouch behind the fence and wait. After several seconds, a shape emerges between two oaks, a wild dog, or maybe a small wolf. Hard to tell at this distance. Its ribs show under its coat, and it walks with the careful steps of an animal that has been hunted more than it has hunted others. It sniffs the air, looks around, and moves closer to the open field. I stay low and watch. Fresh meat crosses my mind immediately. It has been months since I tasted anything close to real protein. Every part of me wants that animal, but I also know the risk. If it is bitten or infected, eating it could end me. If it leads me into a chase, I might run into a pack. I wait and observe. The creature stops near a fallen log and scratches the dirt. No signs of unnatural behavior, no jerks or spasms or blood around its mouth. Still, the risk remains. I whisper to myself, if you do this, you do it clean and from distance. No chasing, no mistakes. The animal wanders toward the road, giving me a clear side angle. I load a bolt with hands that feel too tense. I tell myself to relax, but the thought of food after weeks of scraps pushes too many things through my head at once. I raise the crossbow, brace it against the fence, and track the animal's movement. My breath feels unsteady, so I pause and steady my grip, telling myself one clear thing: make this count. I squeeze the trigger. The bolt strikes, but not perfectly. The animal jumps and bolts toward the ditch, leaving a streak of disturbed dust behind it. I curse softly and sprint around the tower fence, staying alert for infected that might have heard the shot. I follow the trail until I reach the ditch. The animal sits there, injured but still alive and snapping in panic. The moment I get close, it lunges, and I stumble backward. It is not infected, just terrified and in pain. I approach slowly this time and press it down with my knee while delivering a clean finishing stab with my knife. My hand shakes for a moment once it is over. I drag the body away from the ditch and check the hide for any signs of bites or infection. Nothing. No swelling, no discoloration, no strange texture. The meat is as clean as anything I can hope for in this world. I wrap it in scrap cloth and take it back toward the tower. While walking, I keep checking the edges of the fields, half expecting infected or scavengers drawn by the noise or scent. Fortunately, the area stays quiet. When I reach the base, I realize the next challenge: cooking the meat without attracting attention. I cannot risk a fire that produces too much smoke. I also need to keep the meat off the ground long enough to process it safely. I move into the shade of the tower and work quickly. The knife is dull, but it gets the job done if I push hard enough. I slice the meat into thin strips so I can cook it faster and avoid raw spots. After collecting the pieces in the dented pot, I bury the remains at a distance so animals, or infected, do not wander near the tower following the scent. Back on the platform, I build a small fire using cloth strips and tiny bits of scrap wood. I cook the meat slowly, keeping the flame low enough that the canopy traps most of the smoke. The smell hits me harder than I expect. It is the kind of smell that reminds me of nights before the outbreak, simple and comforting, but I push that thought away before it digs too deep. I eat the cooked strips in silence. The taste is plain, but it fills my stomach and gives me a strength I did not realize I had lost. I save half of the cooked meat for later, wrapping it tightly and placing it inside the tank where it stays cool. As evening settles, I sit near the railing and watch the fields again. With food in my system and the crossbow practice showing small improvements, the world feels slightly less hostile. Not safe, not predictable, just less impossible. I think about the next steps: reinforcing the fence, searching the nearby buildings properly, finding more bolts, improving the water collection. Every one of those tasks sounds exhausting, but they also mean survival. I lean back against the canopy pole and let the night air settle across my face. For the first time in a long time, I feel a steady direction forming, instead of just reacting to disaster. That is a rare feeling, and I hold on to it until the sky goes fully dark. The next morning brings a heavy stillness. No wind, no distant groans, no rustling from birds. I have learned not to trust quiet like this. It usually means something forced the noise out. Still, I cannot stay on the tower forever. If I want bolts, tools, and a real fix for the rain pipe, I need to explore the nearby buildings. I pack lightly: crossbow, knife, a few cooked meat strips, and a cloth water wrap. Before climbing down, I spend several minutes just watching the field from above. It never hurts to give the world a chance to show me what I missed. Nothing moves. That is almost worse than seeing something. I descend the rope ladder and move into the grass, keeping my steps slow. The snack bar held nothing more than scraps last time, so I head instead toward a cluster of old utility sheds a few hundred yards away. The walk feels longer than it should. Every time the grass bends, I freeze and scan for anything crawling through it. I keep both hands on the crossbow, though I know I am still inconsistent with shooting. The sheds sit behind a chain-link fence that has mostly collapsed. The doors are dented but intact. I approach the closest one, brace my shoulder against the frame, and push until it grinds open enough for me to slip inside. The interior smells damp and stale. Old tarps hang across the wall, like someone once tried to organize inventory. I check every corner, careful not to step on anything that might make too much noise. I find a toolbox missing half its contents, a cracked bucket, 2 metal brackets, and a roll of old duct tape stiff around the edges. Even stiff tape can help seal a pipe if warmed carefully. I place everything in my pack. As I kneel to inspect a storage crate, I hear a sharp groan outside. Not a human voice. One of the infected, close enough that it catches my breath. I stop moving. The groan turns into a dragging sound, then another. I crouch beside the door crack and peek out. 3 infected wander along the broken fence. They look fresh, not dried out like the ones near the tower. One has its jaw hanging halfway off, swinging uselessly as it moves. Another drags something behind it, an old jacket torn and soaked. I do not want to risk a fight here, not in a tight shed where I have no escape route. I stay still, listening to their uneven breathing until they move on, drifting toward the fields. When their silhouettes shrink far enough, I step out quietly and continue to the next building. The larger shed at the far end looks promising. Its roof is bent inward, but the walls appear mostly stable. Approaching it, I notice something that immediately puts me on alert. Footprints. Human ones. Several pairs. Fresh too. The mud shows crisp outlines, not smoothed by wind or rain. My first instinct is to turn back to the tower and forget this entire trip, but the tracks do not lead toward the tower. They head across the field and disappear behind a cluster of ruined farmhouses. This complicates everything. I thought this area was empty. Apparently not. I push the shed door open and freeze again. Something is on the floor. 2 bodies. A man and a woman, both in their 30s maybe. Both wearing patched clothing and carrying light backpacks. Their throats are torn open. One still clutches a small hunting knife. The blood is dried, but not old. I step closer and check for signs of bites, scratches, anything that explains how they fell. The wounds are messy, the kind that come from panicked fighting against fast infected. Their faces look twisted, not from infection, but from fear. Whatever hit them, did it quickly. I step back and rub my hand over my face. I do not know these people, but seeing them here hits hard. Survivors are rare now, good ones even rarer. Someone traveling in a pair like this had a system, a rhythm, a reason to believe he or she could cover ground safely. And it still was not enough. I force myself to search their packs, not out of disrespect, but because leaving supplies behind helps no one. I find half a roll of bandages, a fishing line, a cracked flashlight, and a metal tin of something that might be dried fruit. I pocket everything, then kneel beside them out of habit and quietly say, "Sorry, I hope it was fast." Before leaving, I scan the ground for more tracks. I see scuff marks from the infected that killed them, and more human footprints leading farther east. Either these two were part of a larger group, or someone else came through afterward. Neither option comforts me. I back out of the shed slowly, crossbow raised in case anything still lingers nearby. The air feels colder now, even though the weather has not changed. The fields grow quieter as I return toward the tower. It is the kind of quiet that suggests everything living in the area scattered after whatever happened here. Halfway back, I see another infected. This one moves differently, faster than a walker but not sprinting. Its head jerks from side to side, picking up scents or sounds. It has dried grass tangled around its arms and fresh mud streaked across its legs. I crouch in a ditch and hold still. It walks within 10 yards of me and pauses. I grip the crossbow, ready to fire if I must, even though I know my chances of hitting its skull at this distance are low. After what feels like too long, it continues on a crooked path away from me. I remain in the ditch until its sound fades. By the time I reach the rope ladder, my nerves feel stretched thin. Seeing those dead survivors changed something in me. I cannot pretend this area is empty anymore. Someone else passed through. Maybe more than one group. I cannot know whether they are friendly, hostile, or desperate, but desperate people tend to make dangerous choices. As I climb, I force myself to focus on each rung. The height feels worse today, probably because of everything I saw. When I pull myself onto the platform, I sit for a long minute and breathe deeply. Once I steady myself, I unload the supplies. The duct tape and brackets will help with the rain pipe. The fishing line could become part of traps. The bandages are a relief. Even used sparingly, they mean the difference between infection and recovery. The tin of fruit tastes old but edible. I take a small portion and save the rest. I sit under the canopy and try to process everything. 2 survivors dead, footprints going east, fresh infected in the fields. Someone traveling with enough caution to avoid the tower, but still caught by the infected when cornered. The weight of it pushes me to make a decision. I cannot rely on isolation alone. I need stronger defenses. I need better awareness of the area. And I need to be ready in case whoever left those tracks comes looking for shelter, or decides the tower is worth fighting over. My crossbow practice needs to improve faster. I also need more scavenging runs, but with far more caution. The tower is my shelter now, but it is only as safe as the decisions I make each day. If I hesitate, I end up like those 2 in the shed. The next morning, I start rebuilding the fence around the base of the tower. The old structure still stands, but the plywood is warped, and the wooden posts lean in different directions. I pull loose boards away, sort them by strength, and drive new stakes into the ground using a metal pipe. The sound carries farther than I want, so I stop frequently to look around. The area stays quiet. Every time I fasten a board in place, the fence feels more solid. I weave scrap metal sheets into the lower sections so infected cannot push through easily. The work takes most of the day, and by evening, the fence looks less like a random pile of debris and more like something built with thought. I stand back and study it, letting myself feel a small moment of confidence. After the fence, I focus on visibility. The tower gives me height, but I rarely use it fully. I climb the ladder inside and then climb onto the canopy frame, careful not to put too much weight on one spot. From here, I can see the road stretching in both directions, the old sheds, and the far tree line. Nothing moves except grass shifting under the breeze. I memorize every landmark and think about where I need to clear brush to create open paths for escape or defense. Once I climb down, I mark areas on a scrap piece of wood, making a simple map of where to cut and where to avoid stepping. The next day, I take the crossbow down to the shooting range again. The practice feels smoother now. I miss less, and the bolts land closer together on the plywood. I do not fire fast, just consistently. There is no need to rush. When the bolts stick cleanly, I pull them free and examine each one, learning how different angles affect the damage. By midday, the pattern on the plywood looks tighter. I would not call myself skilled, but I no longer feel clueless. That alone is worth the hours I put into it. In the afternoon, I clear brush from the edges of the field. Not too much, just enough to expose direct sightlines from the tower. This helps me spot infected long before they reach the fence. While I work, I think about the two survivors again. Whoever they were, their presence changed the way I look at the area. I stop assuming I am alone. I approach every corner with caution. I do not step into any building without listening first. When I kneel to gather dead branches, I keep the crossbow close enough to grab instantly. I do not want paranoia to run my life, but caution is a habit I can live with. That night, I sit under the canopy and examine the brackets I took from the shed. I heat them slightly with a small flame, just enough to soften the old metal. I use them to reinforce the rain pipe patch, tightening the plastic wrap and securing the tubing. When I run water through it the next morning, using the bucket, the seal holds. A drop escapes from the side, but nothing major. I place the bucket below to catch any future rainfall. With food, water, and a weapon that works, the tower finally starts to feel stable, not fragile. Later that day, I decide to make one more scavenging trip. Not to collect anything specific, but to check the shed area where the survivors died. I approach quietly, knowing that infected often return to places where they left a scent. When I reach the shed, I find one of the bodies missing. No drag marks, no torn clothing left behind, just gone. The second body remains, still untouched. I scan the ground carefully. Whatever took the first body did not leave visible tracks. I back away slowly, not wanting to linger. The world is full of things that do not make sense anymore. It is better to step back instead of chasing explanations that lead to trouble. On the way back, I see 3 infected in the fields. They wander aimlessly, slow and unfocused. I crouch low and watch them for a minute. None seem alert enough to notice me. I keep my distance and return to the tower, climbing the rope ladder quickly and pulling it up behind me. Once I am safe on the platform, I sit on the boards and stare at the field where I saw them. Moments like this remind me that even a strong shelter is worthless if I stop paying attention. Over the next few days, I build more improvements. I lash boards across the platform where the structure feels thin. I add a narrow shelf near the railing for quick access to bolts and tools. I rig a small alarm system made from string and metal cans positioned along the fence. The sound will reveal whether something tries to push through at night. I test it by pulling on the string and listen to the soft rattle echo across the clearing. Simple, but effective. One afternoon, while organizing bolts inside the tank, I hear the cans rattle. Not lightly, hard, repeated. I freeze. The sound continues for several seconds, then stops. I grab the crossbow and climb to the platform. Below, 3 infected press against the fence. One slams its shoulder into the boards. Another claws at the wire. The third stands still, head tilted upward toward the sound of my movement. I load a bolt and take my time. I have practiced enough that I know how to steady myself. I aim for the closest infected's forehead and fire. The bolt hits cleanly and drops it instantly. The second one takes 2 shots, one hitting the jaw and the next landing properly. The third wanders along the fence line and collapses after I fire again. When the last one falls, I stay at the railing and watch their bodies. There is no movement, no twitch. The crossbow feels solid in my hands. I climb down to clear the bodies before they attract others. I drag them far from the tower and cover them lightly with dirt. It is quick work, but necessary. Once I return, I sit at the base of the ladder and let my thoughts settle. Those 3 infected pushed harder than the earlier ones. It confirms what I already knew. The world does not get easier, no matter how well I fortify a place. The best I can do is adapt faster than it changes. A week passes like this. Small routines form naturally. Crossbow practice in the morning. Fence inspection before midday. Scavenging once every 2 or 3 days. Cooking meat or boiling water in the evenings. Repairing boards or equipment when the light starts to fade. Each day feels slightly more stable than the last. I notice that my movements become less frantic and more deliberate. I stop expecting disaster around every corner. I still stay cautious, but the constant tension that once lived in my body starts to loosen. The tower becomes a place I understand. One morning, while checking the bucket after a night of rainfall, I realize something simple and surprising. I feel rested. Not just physically rested, but mentally settled in a way I have not felt since before the outbreak. The tower is not perfect. I know danger still exists in every direction, but I am alive, fed, armed, and improving my defenses each day. I run my hand along the railing and feel the rough texture of the repair work I did. It is uneven, but it holds. That is enough. I climb to the canopy and take in the horizon. The fields shift gently. The road stretches untouched. The wind carries the faint scent of the storm's leftovers. For the first time since arriving here, I do not scan for threats right away. I just look, not waiting for danger, not expecting anything at all. The tower stands tall beneath me, steady and reliable. I did not plan on staying here long when I first climbed up, but the idea of leaving now feels unnecessary. I have shelter, I have food, I have a weapon that I finally understand. I have a defensible position that only gets stronger the more work I put into it. When I step back under the canopy and sit down, the thought settles easily in my mind. I am staying here, not because I have no other options, but because this place gives me something I lost long ago, a clear sense of control. It does not erase the past or the people I lost, but it gives me room to breathe. I take a slow drink of water and look out across the clearing again, letting myself accept something I have not allowed in a long time. I am safe enough. I am capable enough. And for now, this tower is home. And that's where we'll stop for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me how the story hit you. What moments worked, what didn't, and what you'd want to hear next. And a big thank you to everyone supporting the channel, especially with extra membership. Carlos Herrera, Dominique Johnson, The Great Anywho, Jadala, Madam Midnight, Deborah Powell, William Blackwell, TJR. You keep this project alive. Until next time, Survivor. Jack's Nightmares signing off.